everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag? At the conclusion, we'd like a moment of silence for Marianne Rowe. She had a 40-year career in the Maplewood Police Department, first as a crossing guard, then working in the Records Bureau, and finally as a matron. She was there from 1967 to 2008. Marion and her husband Ray were active in the Garden Club, and Marion was the past president of the Garden Club. So we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do a moment of silence for Marion Rowe. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence for Marion Rowe. Thank you. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2018 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2017, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams? Here. Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here. Good night, CC.
Mr. McGehee?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting, whereas desires this governing body to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise described by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussion of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 6, 2018 meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee. I'm going to run through the agenda quickly. Our first item is going to be a proclamation for Social Work Month for 2018. I know we have some folks in the audience. Mr. Daffis is going to handle that proclamation. We have a proclamation for Women's History Month, but we're waiting for a couple more people to come, so we'll hold that off until they get here. We might intersperse the Board of Health meeting. We'll have public comment first on agenda items, and then we'll have the Board of Health meeting. So we'll see how it works. We'll make that adjustment. We have an ordinance on final passage about increasing the fees at the pool. We have another ordinance on final passage which increases the permit fees, smoke detector fees, and alarm inspection fees.
Is that it says on the agenda new.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's new, right?
That's new.
Yes, that's new. Sorry, that's introduction. We have another introduction on no stopping or standing on Chancellor Avenue at 44th Street. We have 5 discussion items. We'll be talking about pavers in Maplewood Village, the location of a new basketball court, not in Maplewood Village. Number 3 will be senior home share legislation. Number 4 is support of New Jersey Assembly's proposed 7-bill gun safety package. And we have a resolution 54-18 that speaks to that. We might want to pull that out of the consent agenda and vote on that separately. And then we'll be having some budget discussions on capital, personnel, and overall expenses and revenue. The consent agenda has 7 items. We'll be adopting the Sustainable Essex Alliance recommendation to retain Gable Associates as the consultant for our energy aggregation program, and authorizing Maplewood to be the lead agent for that. I mentioned the resolution on the gun safety. We'll vote on that separately. Then we have a resolution on various fees for the Department of Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Affairs, a resolution to approve the bills and claims, resolution to do accumulated severance liabilities for a retiring employee at DPW, and then we'll be approving the open and closed minutes of February 20th. We'll have our second public comment session. We received a report from the Finance Committee. We have administrative reports, and then reports from elected officials, and then we will adjourn. So first up, Mr. Daffis, we have Social Work Month. If you'd like to go down and invite members of the audience who are here for that.
Absolutely.
Anybody who's a social worker, come on up. Come on up. Our welfare director's here. Come on up. Mr. Rowe, you want to get in on this? Why not? The true nature of your profession.
So I'm just going to read the proclamation. I'm really excited that we are doing this here in Maplewood. I think we would all agree that the contributions that social workers make here in our community, as well as in communities around our nation, are numerous and their contribution invaluable. So, and I must say that, I must note that this was an idea from Kelly Quirk, a dear friend, fellow activist, organizer, and amazing social worker herself. So here we go. Social Work Month 2018. Social workers are leaders, advocates, and champions, and that they are. Whereas the social work profession is dedicated to enhancing the well-being of others and meeting the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable in our society. Whereas social workers embody this year's Social Work Month theme, social workers, leaders, advocates, and champions. Whereas the social work profession is expected to grow faster than average over the next 7 years, with more than 649,000 people expected to be employed as social workers by 2024. Whereas social workers are present throughout our society, including the government, schools, universities, social service agencies, communities, the military, and in healthcare and mental health organizations. Whereas social workers are the largest group of suppliers of mental health services in the United States, and the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs is one of the largest employers of social workers holding advanced degrees. Whereas social workers are present in times of crises, helping people overcome issues such as death and grief, and helping people in communities recover from natural disasters such as floods and hurricanes. Whereas social workers have pushed for decades to ensure rights for all, including women, African Americans, Latinos, people who are disabled, people who are LGBTQ, and various ethnic, cultural, and religious groups. Whereas the social work profession has helped bring about some of the most profound positive changes in our society over the past century, including voting rights, improved workplace safety, minimum wage, and social safety net programs that help prevent poverty and hunger. Now, therefore, in recognition of all of these numerous contributions made by America's social workers, I, Dean Daffis, committee member of the Township of Maplewood, on behalf of the Township Committee, proclaim the month of March 2018 as National Social Work Month, and call upon citizens to join the National Association of Social Workers and the Township of Maplewood in celebration and support of the social work profession.
Next up, I believe we have everyone for Women's History Month proclamation, and Township Committeewoman Adams will do that.
Get it down to my height. It's not that easy. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to call some very distinguished women up to join me tonight. I have the pleasure and honor to be serving in elected official position here in Maplewood, and several of the women I'm going to call up have done the same. I'd like to start with the Honorable Assemblywoman Myla Dacey. Former trustee of South Orange, Mary Thoreau. You can't go out of order. Trustee Karen Hartshorn Hilton. Former Mayor Ellen Davenport, and first woman mayor, only woman mayor. Let's keep adding that. First woman TC member, Connie Cosgrove, to join us, please. Former Deputy Mayor Kathy Leventhal, come on up. Most recent TC member, India Larrier, please come up. Village President of South Orange, Sheena Collum, thanks for getting here. Board of Ed, former President, Beth Doherty. Another Board of Ed member, Andrea Renharden, please come up. I can remember. And if I could be so bold as to invite Nancy Gagnier, I always mess up your name, Gagnier, from the Community Coalition on Race to join us. Here you go. And Springfield Avenue Partnership Executive Director and member of our Committee for Women's History Month, Julie Doran. And I'd like to invite any women, anyone I've missed who's here. Oh, Maureen. Oh, you are here. I'm sorry. Come on up. I didn't see you behind my husband. He has a big head. I'm sorry. My apologies. Thank you for coming. So because we have such a wonderful turnout from these distinguished ladies up here with me, we don't have enough whereases. Had I known we'd have such a good turnout, I would have written more. So I'm going to put, I've divvied them up in no particular order except to have the Assemblywoman kick off, if that's okay. And then and we have some who've already said that they don't have to read. So you can read it from here where it's littler or from here where it's a little bigger. Yeah. So here, you can start that one. And I will get everybody up in the order that you're in. Okay. We had some.
Thank you so much, Nancy, as committee woman. This is a wonderful idea, and we're kicking off Women's History Month in a good way, I think. Okay. Whereas for more than 2 centuries, our nation has grown under the simple creed that each of us is created equal, it is a notion that makes America unlike any other place on earth. A country where no matter where you come from or what you look like, you can go as far as your talents will take you. And whereas Women's History Month is a time to remember those who fought to make that freedom as real for our daughters as for our sons, written out the promise of the franchise, they were women who reached up to close the gap between America and what it could be. They were driven by a faith that our union could extend true equality to every citizen willing to claim it. Year after year, visionary women met and marched and mobilized to prove what should have been self-evident. They grew a meeting at Seneca Falls into a movement that touched every community and took on our highest institutions. And after decades of slow, steady, extraordinary progress, women have written equal opportunity into the law again and again, giving generations of girls a future worthy of their potential. And
whereas that legacy of the change is all around us, women are more than half our population, nearly half of our nation's workforce, and more than half of our college graduates. But even now, too many women feel the weight of discrimination on their shoulders. They face a pay gap at work, or higher premiums for health insurance, or inadequate options for family leave. These issues affect all of us, and failing to address them holds our community back. Whereas medical research has for decades focused on men, ignoring women, and particularly women of color. In fact, medical research in many areas, including cardiovascular disease, which kills more women than men, often includes few women subjects, or else doesn't report results by gender. This disparity in research by gender has resulted in misdiagnoses and incorrect treatment of women. And whereas recent times have brought to light the sexual harassment and abuse imposed on women in the workforce for decades, holding them prisoners to power and limiting their ability to advance and to thrive in their careers. Thank God I never experienced it.
Whereas women and men are united through the hashtag Time's Up and the hashtag MeToo movements to fight for women's safety by creating an environment that allows more and more women to courageously speak their truths and come forward to call out their abusers.
Whereas millions of women and men across the world have turned out in protest of a president who has objectified women and set the stage for women, opening up about their past experiences of sexual harassment. And
whereas women are still not fully or adequately represented at the top table of organizations and corporations, nor on local, state, and national governing bodies, and are therefore not being heard or listened to, nor is a woman's very important perspective properly represented when decisions and laws are being made. And
whereas our history shows that when we couple grit and ingenuity with our beliefs, there is no barrier we cannot overcome. We can stay true to our founding creed that in America, all things should be possible for all people. That spirit is what called our mothers and grandmothers to fight for a world where no wall or ceiling could keep our daughters from their dreams. Although we still have much to do and we need more women running for office to make our opportunities brighter, we recognize the accomplishments of women who fought for our rights in the past and pledge to them to keep advocating for equality. And
whereas Women's History Month is also not adequately recognized each year, nor are the accomplishments of women in history adequately focused on in our schools during the month of March and otherwise. And
whereas South Orange and Maplewood community leaders are working together to finally shine the spotlight on Women's History Month with events and promotion of local women-owned businesses, and to celebrate women's empowerment, and to focus on women in history who fought for our rights and whose lives changed the course of history. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Adams, and Mayor DeLuca, on behalf of the Township Committee, proclaim March 2018 Women's History Month in the Township of Maplewood.
All of us. Yes. Right.
Next turn, Myra.
Sonia, they want it high. There you go. No, no, no.
There we go. Everybody got Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thanks for doing that. That was great. Thank you. Thank you.
So if we can have your attention, we have one additional item.
No, I actually don't remember the reason why we didn't present this with Andrea Larry or left the Township Committee. But it doesn't matter because this is a better time to do it. And so Andrea, please come on. September. And since we've already had a lot of whereases, I will not read this, but I will simply point out a couple of highlights. This is a joint resolution from Senator Cody, Assemblyman McKeon, and myself to honor your service on the board here, on the committee, Township Committee, right? I tell you, all these names, it's confusing. And it's from the legislature, and it is a moment when we recognize unusual contributions of our citizens in particular. A couple of sentences here, I think, capture the spirit. India Larrier is especially appreciated for her tireless dedication, on behalf of her fellow citizens, which is particularly evident in her exceptional efforts as president of the Maplewood First Aid Squad, vice president of Renaissance Newark Development Corporation, and as a member of the Sigma Theta Delta Honor Society. And whereas within all the spheres of her life and work, India R. Hayes Larrier has established a model to emulate and set a standard of excellence toward which others might strive. It is altogether fitting and proper for this legislature to pause in its deliberations to recognize India R. Hayes Larrier and to praise her as an individual of outstanding character and determination. On behalf of the legislature, belatedly, but in this august company of women leaders. Congratulations.
Thank you. I will confess that Nancy gave me a little bit of a heads up. Thank you. Otherwise, I shot my not yet. All I can say is that doing this, it's a labor of love. You can ask anyone up there, you can ask anyone out there. It is a labor of love. It's a great community. I love this community. I love serving it, and I continue to serve it even now on the senior advisory committee, and hope to serve it for a long time to come.
We're all short. I love it.
Just Sonia, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We are now at the portion of our agenda. We will accept public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the Township Committee? Whose column you want to address the Township Committee? Cool.
You must have really tall people here in Maple.
I don't know what that's about.
Yeah.
Short people. So Sheena Collum, South Orange Village President, 73 Muse Lane. I wasn't here for your reorganization meeting because I was in Port St. Lucie, Florida, visiting my parents. But I just want to take this opportunity to recognize how amazing this Township Committee is. I don't know what relationships in the past were between South Orange and Maplewood, but I can speak to at least my time as Village President, and it has been absolutely remarkable. The amount of joint initiatives, but the things that people don't actually see, which is when we have questions of one another regarding the departments. Myself and our police chief in South Orange were thrilled to be able to attend the forum that you had because we recognize the value of departments working together. Questions regarding public safety, I send them to you. Mayor DeLuca, I feel like you are my partner in crime. We are continually making the rounds around the state to advocate for the values of both South Orange and Maplewood. Nancy, I have to give great kudos to Nancy because she was the mastermind behind this whole Women's History Month, and she had the foresight to reach out to me in South Orange and say, let's do this together. Let's create a two towns first Women's History Month. Frank, you are incredible. I see you everywhere. I don't know, you're like sunshine. You're in every single picture. Greg, I sincerely admire the thoughtful level of just analytical skills that you have. I guess that happens with being an attorney. And I also love your wife, and good night, Cece. And then Dean, you have been such a tremendous addition to this Township Committee. I didn't know you, but I've got to know you very quickly because I'm not sure there's more likes on social media from any individual member between the two towns. But just on behalf of the governing body, and especially for the public to know, is that when we have questions or challenges or looking at adopting a new ordinance, is that our friends on the Maplewood Township Committee are always very forthcoming. Our staff work well together. The elected officials work very well together. And so I feel very, very blessed to have partners literally right over the line who are seeing us as the two towns, but with the one community, and that spirit holds true. So if I were here for the reorganization meeting, that's what I would have said to each and every one of you. Your friendship means a great deal to me, and your partnership means just as much. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back at you.
Good evening, Jeanette Page Hawkins, County Liaison. Good evening, all. The last meeting brought to my attention, I went back to speak to the county engineer about the Irvington Avenue project, and he indicated that he was going to be in contact with your engineer and mentioned a forum that would be scheduled for public opinions to be voiced. So I just want to give you that feedback on that. And earlier this evening, I did communicate with the mayor that the county executive is prepared to assist during this upcoming snowstorm with anything storm-related that you may need, as well as salt and snow removal and things like that. I also left my contact numbers for you as well.
Yes, you did.
So we stand to assist in any way.
So just to give you a little history with your predecessor, Deborah, we ran out of salt once, and we had to do a midnight run up to the S-curves in South Orange there with some trucks to get some sand and salt in the middle of the night. That was our deal, was to get up there.
Okay.
So thank you. So you have been very helpful with all of our storms in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Okay, if not, we will move to our Board of Health meeting.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to Chapter 5, Section 5, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2018 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2017, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams? Here. Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. McGee?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. Whereas Section 7 provides as governing body that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. Whereas desire of the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provision of this act, at the same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the February 6th meeting.
Mr. McGee, I'd like to move that we approve the minutes of the February meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes. Mr. Rowe, may we have your report, please?
Okay, I'd just like to say that Assemblywoman Mila Jacey and I both kind of began our public health careers together. 40 years ago, she was a public health nurse in East Orange, and I was an inspector. And so we've known each other since then, and I'm very glad to see that she's gone on to work for the state and do great things. So it's nice to have an old friend like that. As far as we talked about programs to do more education on breast cancer, and our health educator nurse, Candace Davenport, got a lot of information from the Susan Komen Foundation. And so I think we're going to try to do publicity for the Race for the Cure, which is May 6th. We're also going to include breast cancer information in all our regular and special programs. And one thing I'd like to do is we got these really nice little, just nice size health information flyers about breast cancer. And so what I want to do is, as we're able to, because we're all over town all the time, is to give these out to women who work in restaurants, nail salons, beauty shops, any other type of business. And I think that will help increase awareness. If somebody personally gives them something like this, maybe they'll pay a little more attention than they might have otherwise. So, that'll be an ongoing project, which we hope to continue, at least for the next year or so, as much as we're able to get. And we'll try to get information in the different languages, too. In my narrative report, I wrote a little about tuberculosis, so I hope if you weren't familiar with that, you read it. It's still the worldwide #1 infectious disease killer. And so what I'm trying to do in my narrative reports, and this was something that the state wanted us to do, was more education for the Board of Health. So this is how I tried to do it, is every month I'll try to write on a different topic. And maybe sometimes it'll be laws and regulations, other times it'll be some particular health issue. So that's my plan, and so I hope when you do look at the narrative report, please read it. Because I'm thinking a lot of people don't know the history of tuberculosis in New Jersey. We used to have hospitals, special hospitals for people with tuberculosis, and that's all pretty much in the past now. We have it, thank goodness, we have TB pretty much under control in the United States, but it's not the same worldwide. So it's something that we have to be constantly aware of, and not cut our resources for controlling TB. Every once in a while, like a lot of programs and lots of public health programs, and also all sorts of useful programs, they're sometimes in the danger of, being in the budget cuts. So, but I want to just plug in to please never cut the tuberculosis programs. It's a lifesaver, and it could easily spread again if we're not careful. And that's my report.
I have two questions for you. One, we ran into each other a couple weeks ago in the morning at the train station, and there was an issue with the dumpster.
Yes.
Did you ever get to the bottom of that, I imagine?
Well, I know that, I think not just me, but I think several other people were making calls to New Jersey Transit and Waste Management, and the dumpsters and all the bags that were on the ground were removed that day. I'm going to follow up. There's still some debris and litter, and so I'm going to follow up with that. I thought I'd wait till the snow melted after the snowstorm, and then contact New Jersey Transit, tell them they had to clean that up too.
Well, that's a perfect segue. With the impending storm coming, would you like to alert the public of your efforts in terms of preparation?
Well, this morning our town administrator called a local OEM meeting to get us all on board. The mayor was there. And you were there via telephone, the fire chief, police chief, public works, some of the other department heads were there, and just to make plans for in case the storm turns out to be very bad and we need to open a shelter. Of course, trees down are always a problem, and which public works has to take care of. And also we need to coordinate with PSE&G whenever the trees fall onto wires. The police need to be active in closing streets if need be, and of course public works, salting and plowing. So they're going to be busy tomorrow.
6 a.m., right? Is that where we're going to have the center open, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning?
Yeah, the community center on Burnett Avenue will become our shelter if needed. We put supplies there this afternoon and cots. We have people coming in at 6 a.m. tomorrow to open it if necessary, in case somebody needs to evacuate their home and they have no place else to go.
Just to be clear, they're going to be there 6 o'clock in the morning to open. It's going to be open at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Yes. And if somebody has a problem, or they lose power, or they just need to be somewhere else, that center will be open until we decide to close it.
Yes. Yes. And as I recall from the Hurricane Sandy, the reason most people had to evacuate is because electric wires fell on their homes. So they had no choice but to evacuate. It's usually best to stay in your own home if you can, shelter in place, as we call it. But there are situations where you just have to leave, and we will have this available for them.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Any questions for Mr. Rowe? Okay, I'd like to invite the, thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the public to address the board. Seeing no one, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Aye. Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go back to the main agenda, item number 9. We have an ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, item number 9 on final, ordinance 2892-18. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 123 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Fees, which is municipal pool. This ordinance will revise pool rates beginning in 2018 and will add a non-resident membership.
I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Okay, before we discuss it or entertain it, we do have to have a public meeting. This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this ordinance, which revises the pool rates? Seeing no one, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. We have an item on introduction, number 10.
Mayor, item 10, 2896-18, is an ordinance to amend Chapter 123 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Fees. This ordinance will revise certain permit fees, smoke detector, carbon monoxide, alarm inspection fees within the Township of Maplewood.
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on March 20th, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Next up is item 11.
Also on introduction of new ordinance 2897-18 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will prohibit stopping or standing on Chancellor Avenue at 44th Street.
Yeah.
Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on March 20th.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Thank you. First item up on our discussion agenda, pavers in Maplewood Village. Mr. McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last month, we started a conversation in regards to the cost of the pavers, in regards to whether or not we should have some type of assessment or special assessment to help subsidize the expense of the paver project. It's a 3-phase project. The first phase has already been approved, so this is really in relation to phase 2 and 3. Since we last met, I personally have had the opportunity to talk to many residents as well as merchants who have properties or who have a business rather in the village. And, you know, so I pause at this point in regards to the process of allocating or subsidizing a special assessment, because the bottom line is that it sounds like, and as I understand it, we're going to pass this expense down to our merchants. And that's not the intent of this. I think in the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the property owners understand is that, you know, that they are investing in their properties, just as we are residents and we are owners, property owners. And so if there was an assessment or special assessment levied, that the idea would be not to pass it along to our merchants, who really are the lifeline of our business, but yet to incur that cost themselves. I'd like to open this up for discussion.
Just react to what you said. I think the reality is whether this is a special assessment on a commercial property in the village or on a commercial property not in a special improvement district, or even a residential property that rented out to tenants. There's nothing that we can do. A property owner is going to look at their costs, whether it's their mortgage or their building improvements or anything, and naturally build that into their business plan, business model, and what rents they charge. That's the reality. I think what we're talking about here is and we haven't nailed down the numbers, and I think our discussion at the last TC meeting on the budget, the last budget hearing, was to fund phase 2 of the pavers for this year, and in the meantime, look at what we can do to share the cost with some of the property owners. So I think that's something we can't control. And it's also something that I think would be relatively, depending on what the numbers are, a minor kind of increase, if there is one, and if it's passed down. And every lease could be different. they may or may not have the ability to pass through, depending on the lease. But most leases now allow for any increase in property taxes, special assessment or otherwise, and be passed through to the tenant. So I'm not sure if that's something we can do anything about.
I'd like to enter the discussion. So this really does, while thoroughly reviewing and analyzing this issue, it really does open the door to a bigger issue. Yes, what happens here is that even if we were to decide on a contribution that would be de minimis, I think we had our financial officer prepare amortization tables at 10% contribution, at 80% contribution. At 10% contribution on a 10-year note comes to about $85 and some cents per property owner per quarter, which is about $300 some. Now, because we know that property owners frequently pass this on to merchants, and I also, as Mr. McGee mentioned for himself, I also have spoken to several merchants since our last hearing on this, and it's a problem. It's definitely a problem. There is an abuse there. And we're talking about property owners in the village. And when you look at the assessed values of some of these properties, we're talking $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, in one case, $10 million. And so, you know, you'd think that a property owner could, therefore, in good conscience, pay this and not pass it on to the merchant leasing a store on their property. But that's not what happens. Furthermore, we also know that with certain property owners in particular, there is this problem that they have been slow or resident to invest back into the special improvement district that is the village, the Maplewood Village, our great anchor in our great town. So I call out to all merchants in Maplewood Village to organize yourselves. Get together. Try to fight this. Create awareness. Get control of the narrative. This special assessment applies to property owners, not to you. What are you going to do about it? How are we going to fight this? I also call on my colleagues on this governing body to look into what we can do legally to protect merchants by way of certain restrictions in commercial leases, by way of freezing rent hikes, and other things that we can look into, which, by the way, are going on in other cities and towns around the country, most notably in nearby New York City, where they too are facing the same issue. The same issue where mom and pops have to close up shop because they can't afford the rent anymore. Because the guy who owns the Soho building that they're running their little business in keeps raising the rent, and they have to go away in favor of another Chase Manhattan Bank or some other established national retailer. This is a very serious issue for me personally, and I think it's a continuing conversation, certainly. But today, this evening, I would vote against charging assessing a special assessment towards a contribution, even at the very low end of a 10%, which comes to $300 some per year per property owner for the reasons that I stated. Thank you.
I just ask for clarification. So to save $300 a year or 10% on the property owners, which may or may not, commercial property owners, which may or may not pass that on to their tenants, that 10% of the project is going to be increase the residential property tax. That's what we're talking about. That's really what we're talking about here.
We are.
We're talking about,
And it's not something that I am comfortable with. I'm not comfortable at all. But I also don't want to see another merchant leave the village because they're going to have to pay for that $336 and some cents, whatever it comes to.
well, and of course, none of us wants to see that. I just think we need to start, I think the burden being on the, almost 25,000 residents to cover the entirety of this project is unfair to the residents.
It certainly is.
And I would hope
It's
if you,
this is
let me finish.
absolutely.
It's $300 per property, regardless of how many storefronts. So conceivably, it's a property with, or is it $150 over the course of the year for a merchant? So respectfully, I think any merchant that wouldn't be able to shoulder an extra $100 for a year in expenses got more problems than just that.
The reality is
Assessment.
that, the reality is, and I hear you, and I feel you, and I am with you. This is not an easy decision to make. It really is not, because the reality is that it is unfair to the merchants, and it is unfair to all of us, every single resident of Maplewood Township, because the town does not pay for people's sidewalks. That's on you. And here we're saying that we're going to make an exception because of because of the situation that we have in the village. It is certainly not an easy decision, and I certainly take to heart the things that you have said. But we do know, the reality is that with the exception of our restaurants, our other merchants are not experiencing the same kind of robust business as others are, and that is something that I really think about in making this decision. I mean, I grew up in a mom and pop diner, and I know how hard it was for us to survive from month to month, no matter how hard we worked, and even when we were busy and we were doing well. It was very, very tough. And I think about those days, and I think about the merchants that I know very few of us have, gone and spent our money there. We definitely have our pizzas, and we have our beers, and we have our nice cocktails, but we don't buy scarves, and we don't buy fancy cards, and we don't buy a brand new urn, and we don't do what we need to do as a community at large to promote our merchants. And our merchants are not doing all they could do to promote themselves. Use the Maplewood Village Alliance to your benefit. Go to them and say, I need you to help me, help market me, help me garner business, and vice versa. Take the advice from the Maplewood Village Alliance when it's offered, when it says, you could make some improvements here in your storefront, or you could, not do this or not do that because it doesn't really support, what the community wants or the business in our village. Take the advice to heart. Do what you can do to help yourself, but we also have to do what we need to do to support our local merchants, because without the merchants, we don't have a village. Again, and this is not a decision that I make easily, because as I rattled off earlier, and as I sent you all a list of the property assessments of the 40 property owners in the village. I mean, these are very nice properties assessed at very high values. And yes, it would be a lot easier to say, you know what, Mr. So-and-so who owns these 2 properties in the village and a couple more on Springfield Avenue, at $5 million in total, yeah, you gotta cover this. And then he or she is gonna pass it on to the 2 or 3 merchants who are after that likely to walk away in 6 months. So it's, I'm sorry, I spoke a lot longer than I wanted to.
I understand your passion. I don't know that it's based on any facts.
It's based on the reality, on retail reality in the village.
Okay, so why don't we?
I'm not trying to argue.
Okay.
I'm just trying
Did you want to make a point?
Yeah, I'm not, this is what I do for a living, is work with small businesses and manage a downtown district. So I have experience in this too, and the organizations that I've worked for have bonded and paid part of public improvements in the district, and the district still thrives and changes go. Every business owner runs a business differently. Some business owners are more sophisticated at it than others. Some won't listen. Some will be right across from a train station with everything you need when you come home from work, and they'll close at 5 o'clock. There's a zillion issues around this. I personally disagree with you that covering for the village property owners to cover 10% of this project is not asking a lot, and I don't think it would put anybody out of business. And every business owner you talk to, and I'm not just talking about Maplewood, every business owner wants to do better, and they sometimes in my work paint a picture that's not necessarily entirely correct. They're not going out of business tomorrow if they have to pay $10 more, but it's easier to say that. So but I still think it's not a heavy lift for the Village Alliance. They could do this over a very long term, and it would be a very minimal thing. So I don't think it's a heavy lift for them, but.
I did. I guess I have points of agreement with both Mr. Daffis and Ms. Adams. I agree with Mr. Daffis, the rent is too damn high. And I think that but the problem is that there's people who keep being willing to pay it. Really what merchants could better organize around is not necessarily the $300 we're talking about and who keeps it, but trying to organize among themselves. I frequently, see businesses set up, and I look at, just in my head, what it is they're paying in month for rent. And I think, how are they going to sell enough X, Y, Z to make that rent and have, anything left to keep this running? But people keep doing it. That being said, I recognize we don't have the village without the merchants, but we don't have a town without the residents, and we're pricing residents out every day, and taxes are not going to. We're not going to be getting any breaks from Trenton. We're not going to be getting any breaks from Washington, D.C. So I think, considering the benefits that will accrue not only to the property owners, but to the merchants of this project, the benefits of this paver project, the extent to which the Maplewood Village Alliance was involved in promoting this and supporting this and in choosing this, I would support the 10%. I tend to agree with Ms. Adams on the point that, if we're talking 10%, we're talking $300 and change dollars per year. And I tend to agree, particularly if it's divided up among multiple storefronts. And even if it's not, I don't think that when you look at the grand scheme of the dollars and cents we're talking about here, that's going to be a make or break. But not doing that will put a burden on the residents that I think is just unfair to ask them to shoulder 100% of this. So I think I'm on board with some cost sharing. I'm not on board at 80% or 50%. I take the points that Mr. Daffis made that, if that's pushed along, that will be a real burden on the businesses. But I think at 10%, It shares some of the cost, and I think it provides some fairness to the residents without providing unfairness to the owners or the merchants, given the value that they'll see and the value that they have already recognized that they'll see in supporting this. So I would support a 10% special assessment.
I'm not in favor of a special assessment. I wasn't in favor of it last time we talked about. I was willing to go along with the 10% because I thought that's where people were at. But if we're not, I'm happy with that. I want to just talk about the numbers a little bit because I think there's another way to look at this. The assessments in Maplewood Village amount to about $56 million, $56.5 million. Of that, about 13 million of that is on Donnell Road, which would not be affected by, there was three properties. The $10 million one you mentioned is the station house.
That's right.
So it's the station house, it's the office building next door, and it's the old Nelson's garage. So that's 13 million out of 56 million that would pay the special assessment but not get the pavers. So there's an issue there, you know, of that. So that has to be looked at. But let's take a look at, right now, of that $56 million assessment, our assessment, I'm sorry, $56 million, property assessment, our village assessment is about 10 cents. So we get about $55,000 a year in the village assessment. Looking at Mr. Uribe's chart of payment over 10 years, the first year's payment is about $15,000 on the bond and the principal and interest. So $15,000 is 27% of what we're collecting now. So essentially, we would increase the assessment in Maplewood Village by 27% to cover the pavers. That's a huge, I mean, I understand in real numbers, it may not be a lot, $3,000 a year, but for a percentage increase, that's a pretty large increase, 27%. And I agree with you that these will be passed down. Either it's the practice of the property owner or it's in a lease, triple net lease, they'll pass everything down. So it's going to ultimately go to the merchants and the consumers eventually. I think that this, as I said last time, I think this is an investment that we make as a town. We made it before. I think we made it on Springfield Avenue. We're working just a few minutes ago, we were talking to the county representative. We're looking for a public investment on Irvington Avenue. This is what you do. You make those investments hoping that it spurs private investment. It becomes a center of commerce in your town. And I think us paying for it over 3 years like we're doing is a prudent thing. I think it shares the burden. They pay taxes too, so they're paying, as the tax rate goes up to pay for the pavers, some of those property owners in the village are paying that already. So I would not support the assessment, the special assessment for the pavers. I would just continue as we're doing, put $350 a year in this budget, $350 in next year's budget, and be done with it. I would, on the other hand, argue for an increase in the regular assessment of 2%. We have not increased it over the years, and I think that it should be a policy that the regular assessment goes up as our tax rate goes up. That would be, it's just nominal, it's about $1,000 more, but $1,000 more could do some of the marketing you're talking about. It could help sponsor an event over a couple of concerts on a Thursday night or some event there. So I think that we ought to not do the assessment for the pavers, but we should look at increasing the regular assessment on both the Village Alliance and the partnership when we get to talk about those budgets in April.
Follow up on you mentioned 27% assessment. First of all, we haven't even talked about necessarily doing it, whether we would be doing the assessment through the Village Alliance or separately to the property owners. Which means the Donnell Road properties wouldn't be affected. So the other part is 27% sounds like a lot. It is, except that for 20 years, the assessment has not increased, and had the assessment like we're trying to get them to do now increased with regularity and small amounts over every year, then they would have been able to do more. Then they would have been able to pay a loan, and then they would have been able to. So, not compelled necessarily by the 27% number because the budget's so small already. But obviously, we have our.
I'd like to thank my fellow colleagues for their input on, this was a discussion. I mean, this was a sensitive topic that started during the budget hearings. We've all gone back and done our research and received information. I thought it was important for us to have this conversation. Some of the takeaways that I think we need to move forward on, and I agree with Mr. Daffis on a couple points, is we need to look at some of the rent hikes and see if we can freeze that. I think we do need to get the merchants in line and work with them. I think it's an opportunity for us as a TC to, work collaboratively and with strength with the Maplewood Village Alliance to make sure these things happen. The property owners need to understand that this is their village or their town as well, and we need to see them invest in their actual assets. So I think at this point, I know there's no vote because we're going to talk about the budget later. So.
Well, I think it would be good to just state for the record that we're going to do this or not. I mean, it sounds to me like there's not 3 votes to make it a 10% or any shared cost.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it sounds like it's, I'm for it.
Yes, no, I understand.
So
I understand you and Ms. Adams are for it. Mr. Lambert, Mr. Daffis, and I are not in favor of it, so. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Mr. McGahee. Mr. Lambert's on both sides.
I know, on both sides.
True politician. No, I'm sorry. Mr. McGahee. Mr. McGahee.
To get 2 votes on.
Yes.
I prefer to be a different.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. So there's not enough to move it forward. So if you want to take a vote, we can take a vote. Otherwise, I think we've expressed.
I do have a question for Mr. Desiderio, and I realize this is putting you on the spot, so it may just be this is an issue that maybe you or one of your colleagues can get back to us on. But Mr. Daff has brought up an interesting idea in terms of potentially instituting a rent freeze, and I know that that's something that they've tried to do in some areas. I don't know whether there'd be any opportunity under New Jersey law or any specific prohibition under New Jersey law. So if that's something either that you could opine on based on what you already know, or something that you could look into, I would appreciate that, because I think that it's an intriguing idea, but it may be something that's not on the table.
I will be glad to look at it. I mean, my gut reaction is that we cannot.
That was my gut reaction as well.
I think you got a real problem. If you want to collect taxes from people, I think it's difficult to stop their economic advantage. But I'll take a look at it.
Well, the alternative is to have a gradual system so that we're not going from, in terms of, instead of a freeze over, say, a 3-year period or whatever, what other cities have done successfully in commercial, not residential, is they've created, a grading system. So not more than 10% the first 2 years, et cetera, depending on talking about.
Right. I know there's opportunity to do rent control in certain situations for residential. I just, I'm less familiar with.
Not anymore.
It's
essentially in residential rent control essentially wiped out in New Jersey. Anything new.
Oh, okay. So for new construction, it's not even possible.
Right. It's not possible.
Okay.
It's not possible at all. Only there's legacy rent control, and that's it. And then there's vacancy deed control.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest. It's a new idea that's making its way across the country. It's to sort of find a way to save the mom and pops from going out of business across the country.
And I'll be happy to look at it. There's an assessment issue that's coupled with that in terms of the taxes, because on commercial properties, we do assessments on the basis of income. Right. So if the income is less, then the assessment's going to be less, then the taxes are going to be less.
Certainly.
So
they will appeal it.
So you may get it on the other end, but I'll be happy to look at it.
Thank you.
The other thing is, there's nothing that stops us from using the bully pulpit And I think that we could approach, and maybe through you as our liaison, approach the Village Alliance. I don't think we have this problem on Springfield Avenue yet, although I'll be honest, the rents up there are growing fast. They're increasing, and I'm actually surprised by some of the rents, what people think they can get. And they aren't, they're sitting there. But, you know, you never know, somebody comes along. But I think through the Village Alliance, we can have a meeting of property owners. And we have done this before. We've talked to them about this. You know, as you know, I just had a sort of intervened on behalf of one of the merchants there with a property owner on Baker Street.
Right.
And, you know, the property owner said to me, and I was not able to refute it, that, look, this is what I'm charging for the next door store, and this is what I'm getting. So if you know, if people are willing to pay that amount, it's hard to argue that you're charging too much. But I do think it would be useful to, and you know, we're going to be doing this visioning plan with the Department of Community Affairs, so maybe this is a perfect thing to put on the agenda, is having a conversation with the merchants and with the business owners, the property owners, really about what do we see going forward, and how can we, property owners make their money, merchants make their money, but still recognize that they have to work together, and we can't outpace the ability of the mom and pops to pay.
Right. Right. And, you know, and at the end of the day, I think there's a limit in terms of what we can do to protect the merchants from themselves.
Sure.
Okay. Location of a new basketball court, Mr. Lindbergh.
Yes, you know, this is something that, you know, I feel like this is something that we discussed within the first month or two when Mrs. Adams and I were on the Township Committee, and now it's 2 years later, and we've had 2 community meetings. This has been discussed in numerous committees and subcommittees, and I would like to try in 2018 to bring this to reality. So I wanted to, you know, over the years, there have been several locations discussed. We've, the one most frequently discussed and the one about which we hosted the 2 community forums in the neighborhood was at Maple Crest Park. There's also been discussion of D-Hart, either within the park's current framework or perhaps one of the lots that might be able to be acquired that's adjacent to D-Hart Park. Obviously, that's more theoretical or more hypothetical, and also the area near the rescue squad, the old rescue squad building, and pool parking lot area. And you know, this is you know, there have been some delays, I think, from the fact that this has been discussed by Recreation, and Human Services, by Planning and Engineering and Public Works, by Open Space Trust Fund, and I mean, ultimately, it's the 5 of us here who are going to make the decision about where to put this and how to pay for it. So I wanted to see if we could move this forward, because the Recreation Advisory Committee at our last meeting, I mean, I think I could charitably describe it as frustration. That, you know, they say, you know, we held these 2 forums, and you know, nothing. We've made our recommendations. We've had diagrams drawn up, and nothing is moving forward. So I wanted to figure out a way that maybe the 5 of us could sort of break through the multiple committee logjam and figure out. I think there's an agreement that we want to have another basketball court in town. Where do we want to put it, and how do we want to get that done? And I'm open to ideas. I know that you know, at this point, the potential Green Acres funding or grant, you know, that program's been out there for a while. I don't know whether we'd be too late on that, but that would certainly be something that we might want to pursue, particularly if we're putting it in an area that's already part of the Green Acres registry. And also, the Open Space Trust Fund has given funding in terms of design and plans for this court. But before we go forward with design and plans, we want to know where we need to know where we're gonna put it. Otherwise, we're just either never gonna spend that money or we're gonna waste it. So, the feeling at the end of the day of the Recreation Advisory Committee, with which I concur, is that there's at least one, if not two, suitable locations for this new court in Maple Crest Park. Maple Crest Park has had a basketball court in the past. Maple Crest Park would provide an opportunity, because of its location, for a substantial portion of the community that doesn't have walkable access to the courts in Memorial Park, to have access to a basketball court. Although, if there's a strong feeling for another site, at this point, I think the preference of both the Recreation Advisory Committee and myself is just to move forward with something so that we can try to get the court and hold whatever community meetings we need, make whatever plans we need to make, but have the talk actually lead to a new court rather than another year of talking about it without doing it. So that's the start of the discussion. I'm only one vote, but I wanted to bring it to you as my colleagues and say, where do you want the basketball court? And can we get this done?
Where were you saying, in Maple Crest Park?
Well, there's the area there's a couple of different places that the engineer has mocked out. It seems as though the one that would give the most room would be the prior location towards the central portion of Maple Crest. But there's also would be the opportunity to put it more towards the tennis court area, or to move it closer to the parking lot area. And, obviously, each of those were, the size of the court that we can build is going to be determined by the size of the space we have to build it. And each of those provides a different footprint.
Right, we've seen it, we've discussed it at Engineering and Public Works. Mayor, you want to weigh in with your potential other?
Just a couple of things. One area we talked about was in Maple Crest Park was the private parking lot that's behind that row of buildings next to the
Betty White?
Yeah, for lack of a better, it's inspirational dance now, but yeah, the old Betty White building. I spoke to the owner of that property, and he's reluctant to give up any land there. So it would not be a friendly condemnation. We'd have to seize land. He feels that it would affect the marketing of his building if we took parking away. So that was one area that we looked at that would be new. The other new area is south of Dehart Park, the playing field, into the area behind Union Tool, which Union Tool owns, which they rent out to Audi parking lot. So I had a meeting with the president of Union Tool and told him we were interested in coming back to him with an offer, and he said, well, Audi has a 10-year lease. You'd have to get them to agree, and we'd have to see the numbers. So that's what we're in the process of doing, is talking to Audi and seeing if they would agree to allow us to go on their lot to measure and also do an appraisal of the portion of land that we need.
How big is the portion that Audi has? Would we be looking at taking the whole thing, or would we be looking at taking
about 100 feet?
About
100 feet, and the lot is huge.
Yeah,
huge. But I would say it's probably 15% of the spots, or 15% of what they're using.
Yeah, but it's nowhere near all. Yeah.
The one wrinkle is Audi is going to be doing a major reconstruction at their site on Milburn Avenue, and they're going to need all of that lot to park the cars there while they're doing that. So we have to, there's a couple of moving parts here, one of which is getting access through Audi that we can measure off what we actually need so that we could then have an appraiser go in and figure out a price. That's as far as we've gotten in our discussion at the last Engineering and Public Works and Planning meeting.
Are those discussions to provide another option, or is that to the exclusion of Maple Crest?
I think that was an alternative to Maple Crest, because Maple Crest was, I guess, as we were hearing options, you know, we had even heard taking over the parking lot that's on Tuscan, and that would be a problem because we need a place for people to park. And we know we have opposition to putting it into the tennis court area because it's surrounded by residents. So the thought at DeHart was it's new space, so we're adding green space, which was an objective of the Open Space Trust Fund group, and it would not impact as many homeowners. Other parts in DeHart where the skating rink is or the tennis court would impact those people on Toronto. So,
but where's the money going to come from to acquire the
open
property?
space?
And before you say Open Space Trust Fund, have you seen how much they've got?
Yeah, no, I have. So
Also
we're talking
Green
about
Acres.
Green Acres, both county and state, and open space.
Okay.
I mean, that is a problem because, I mean, they can come out of our bonding too. Whatever.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, but if the answer is open space is not particularly robust right now.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting, the delay is becoming frustrating to me and to a lot of the volunteers who put time into this over the years, that we're not moving forward on something. And the frustration, I mean, that I feel and that is really felt at Recreation is, why on earth is this an engineering and public works issue? This is a recreation issue. We can build the court. This isn't a roadway. Let's just put down a basketball court. And we don't need a full-size regulation court. We need just an outdoor basketball court. People can play basketball. We don't need bleachers. We don't need a stadium. We just need a basketball court.
Well, we would, but
we're talking about a regulation-sized court, yeah.
I don't know that we need a regulation-sized court.
I disagree. I think we do. I think it's a slap in the face. I just think it's a slap in the face.
A slap in the face to who? It's a slap in the face to the fact that we've waited years and none of these kids have a basketball court to play on. That's the slap in the face.
If we had a tennis court that wasn't regulation size, I'm sure we'd hear about it.
Well, I think that's different. I think most outdoor basketball courts are not regulation basketball courts. The ones at Memorial Park certainly aren't.
That's the whole point.
so that was what the framework we were operating on, is that we were looking to get enough space to put a regulation basketball court with two side-by-side courts that you could play, in half court each. So it would allow you to have, the higher level tournament opportunities there, but also have the sort of recreational games going back and forth on the side, on the half courts. So somebody should just make a decision on what kind of basketball court you want.
Okay. Well, the Recreation Advisory Committee will bring a proposal to the March 20th meeting.
Okay.
And it's going to be for Maple Crest, and it's going to be for a non-regulation court.
I'll approve that.
Regulation and non-regulation court limits the use greatly, and I feel it's an insult, but I also think
An insult to who, Nancy?
Excuse me. Maple Crest Park has many issues with it, not the least of which is cutting down what few trees remain in mature age, and also affecting residents there.
There's no mature trees in the area where we're talking about in the center of the park, because the basketball court was there up until about 20 years ago.
And why did it go away, Greg?
You tell me. I wasn't living here.
So, I don't know.
It was a big issue for neighborhood.
Yeah, but we've had 2 community meetings at this point.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure, are you talking about where the volleyball was or is? Where's the middle of the, where are you talking about?
If you were to go, if you were to go in the field that's behind the library, and you were to hit a really good shot to right center, that's where the basketball court used to be.
So near the field house?
Yes, not far from the field house, across the walkway from the field house.
So you would take one of the baseball?
No.
Okay, I don't remember, I don't know where it was initially.
Actually,
I'm sure engineering has plans of where it was.
Okay, but we were operating on the assumption of having a regulation-sized basketball court, which takes more space, of course.
Okay, but I mean, I guess I'm wondering what's the magic of a regulation-sized court?
That was what we were operating under, just to allow, I think we got some input from some folks in the community that if we're gonna do this, we ought to have a regulation court. So,
Okay.
and I don't know where, I guess the Recreation Department is talking to you about what kind of court they want.
Right. Their highest priority is getting a court.
So since I'm the one who brought it up 2 years ago that we need a regulation court, we need another court other than the ones over at Memorial Park.
Well, I mean,
That's what we're doing. It's not anybody's sitting on it. It's been on our agenda for engineering public works, and the reality is it does have to go before engineering because that's who's designing it. It's not just, you don't just put up a court. You have drainage issues, you have to design it, you have whether or not the ground is even, what kind of work you have to do to make the ground even to put a court in it. I mean, not as simple as it looks like it would be, and you have to figure out the fencing, the height, the lighting, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, but it's been 2 years and all we are is 2 years older.
Okay.
What's the game plan?
Mr. Lembeck's coming back with a plan for March 20th.
Yes.
Proposal.
Yes.
The location, the main.
Yes.
That is actually what we've been waiting for all this time.
Pardon me?
The location is exactly.
Well, right, no,
we've been exploring locations. I don't think we've been waiting, we've been exploring locations.
Okay.
That's
waiting to determine where it would be.
I mean, we have. We've talked about the pool parking lot and taking the rescue
Right.
squad building. We had the engineer look at that and measure that out, and how many parking spaces it's going to take. And would that be okay? And then there's the expansion of the
Winchester Gardens.
And, I mean, so it's not like nobody's been talking about it.
I know, but that's all we've been doing is talking about it. And
No, we haven't. We've had the engineer look, would it fit here? Would it fit there? Mayor's been talking about expanding DeHart Park and trying to obtain that land. And this is long-term stuff. It's not like, let's
Okay,
just
well,
put up a
I'm going to
parking
come
lot.
with a proposal on March 20th and we
All
can
right.
either vote yes or vote no.
Okay.
All right, next up, senior home share legislation, Mr. Daffis.
Completely different topic. Senior home share legislation, which should probably be expanded senior home share legislation. So in an effort to, as this governing body has always been very sensitive to affordability issues in our community, especially as it relates to our seniors and offering them the opportunity to age in place, we are considering expanding our current legislation that allows seniors to rent or lease rooms in their dwelling to one boarder. This would expand it to 2 people within, again, residential owner occupied, and it would require at least 2 bedrooms. If it's going to be 2 boarders, 2 bedrooms, each assigned a bedroom, or if the boarders are a couple, they may be assigned to 1 bedroom. We are allowing seniors to find a match on their own, or if they want to go through Home Share Inc., which is a nonprofit organization that has been doing this successfully already in this area, offering home sharing opportunities for the elderly. across New Jersey, and they're looking for an opportunity to expand their services in Essex County. And they would be responsible for the matching and the housekeeping related to this. And I think you all received a draft proposed ordinance that our esteemed township attorney, Mr. Desiderio, prepared. How do you all feel about this?
I'm in favor.
Mr. Jaffes, I agree. I support the measure. Providing Maplewood seniors the opportunity to stay in their homes by reflecting some of the cost of living makes a lot of sense to me. So, I mean, it's a primary driver to make seniors want to leave. So, yes, I support it.
Sounds?
Mr. Desiderio, just one thing on your first in the ordinance. I don't think the within in the middle, let's say third line down, should be capital.
I already changed it.
Okay.
As I was sitting here, I was looking at it.
Okay.
So we're going to put it on for the 20th. It would finally be on the 17th. It's got to go to the planning board.
It's 271, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Daffis, you're up again with the Resolution 5418. If you'd like to talk about it and then move the resolution.
Shall I read it?
No.
No, okay.
Why don't you say what it is, though?
Right, of course. Okay. So this is so our legislature, the Judiciary Committee of the Assembly, under the leadership of Assemblywoman and Chairwoman Annette Guajano, considered 7 bills last Wednesday in a set of hearings, February 28th. These are gun safety, sensible regulations that respect the rights of citizens while trying to do even better than we already are doing in New Jersey as one of the strict gun law states in the country to protect our citizens, our children, our communities from gun violence. These are common sense regulations that most people would get behind. They take guns away from those who shouldn't have them. There's an attempt to legislate an Extreme Risk Protective Order Act, commonly referred to as a red flag law, which would allow family members to go to court and obtain a restraining order towards firearm seizure from someone who has displayed signs of being a risk to themselves or causing harm to others. And that bill in particular is being put forth by our own state Assemblyman John McKeon. So the resolution calls for our supporting all 7 bills and sort of leading the way and hopefully encouraging other towns across the state to support our legislature in their efforts. This governing body has done this before. In fact, some of these bills have been enacted before, but ultimately vetoed by the previous governor. We feel better about our chances with these bills this time around under Governor Murphy, who has already explicitly stated that he is in support of such measures and others that may be forthcoming. Accordingly, I move the adoption of this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Here.
Yes, thank you for doing this. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we are now at our budget discussion, and the first item we're going to be discussing is capital. So we have received a new, why don't you come up here?
Yeah, so you know what's going on. We'll work it out here. Come on. Yeah.
The candy dish is over here.
You're, okay.
Okay.
Cool.
So we have, we went over this. There were a couple of items that we needed to get further information about. One was the issue of the $150,000 for municipal town hall parking lot reconstruction with curbs and sidewalks.
Right, and that has been cut by $60,000. And we'll even try to squeeze more out of it depending upon how, when we get in the field and do things, what we discover.
May I interject? Can we, when we talk about these line items, can we read the numbers out?
Yes, 1805, sorry.
1805, right.
1805, this is engineering,
right.
Building improvement at various locations. Thank you. So you have not provided us with a revision other than, which still has $150,000 in it.
Just wait 1 second. There's so many versions of these things that I now have dates on.
You don't put dates on.
Right, and we need to.
It has been updated, but it wasn't distributed.
This one I'm looking at has a date of the 28th of February.
But it's not on the sheet.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, so
wait,
what is your total now for 1805? It was 220,500.
Well, it's 220,500, then it's, so minus 60, which would be 160.
160.
Thank you.
So,
and we will do that, yep. And that will take away, we're going to try to reuse a lot of the slate outside where we can. We walked the entire property. A lot of it is, even though you don't see it in terms of engineering, the grade of it for people who are in wheelchairs or those types of items, it isn't up to code. So when you do something, you have to make it as much up to code as you possibly can. None of our ramps that go from the building are quite up to code either. They're in this to be redone. And the curb cuts here are also not it. And we would just basically mill and cover the parking lot and restripe it, put new signage up because it's very confusing about where people can park and where they can't. And we want to have visitor parking very established so that people don't park in visitor parking unless they're a visitor.
Okay. The other item was let's see. Oh, we added in 1802 we added the 20. So that 95,000 includes the $20,000 for striping, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So can we get a breakdown of that? Because that was one of my discrepancies. I had it at 60,000 in my revisions. So I just want to hear a little more about that $25,000.
Wait a minute. Okay. Wait. Where is it?
It's actually
18,
20.
yeah.
It's 20,000 for striping.
Yeah.
Right. So this is what happened in the discussion with Mr. Kittner when we had him here. He took the striping out because we have the striping machine at DPW. But we're doing so much now that is going to require striping with our work on Prospect Street and Burnett Avenue, that we need to put some money back in because DPW will never be able to do that big striping. Their stuff, what they have really is they can handle a crosswalk. They can handle maybe parking stripes. Stop bars.
Yes.
But they can't do long stretches along the road.
Yeah, in this case, I wasn't necessarily against the allocation. I just wanted clarification. And coming out of our pedestrian safety summit, where the consultant showed us some pretty interesting ways to do crosswalks. There was even conversations of doing some type of 3D, which has obviously helped in terms of speeding. I just wanted to get a better clarification on that price point.
So that was it. That was the reason was because he had taken it all out. We said, nah, I don't think we can take it all out. If we don't use it, that's fine, but we need to have that option to implement some of these ideas that come forward.
Okay.
Well, Mr. McGee, you presented a number of other questions. Do you want to go through your questions?
Sure, I would love to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Taking a look at the police department, line item 18-05, the number that we came up with in the last conversation on the 20th was 86,000. When I went through my records of information provided, I had 73,345. There was a discrepancy, so I wanted to get clarification on that amount. Obviously, I didn't make up the 73,345 that was provided. So I want to know what the incremental expense was.
We had updated some of the paperwork, so I can go back to you and give you the actual 86,000 that we came up with, and some of the other ones that you had questions about. So I know that going forward, there were a lot of supplemental things that were handed, so they were provided in there, so I'll make sure that.
Yeah, I just want to see why the bid shot up by,
if you would.
I want to see why it shot up by 13.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes, when they particularly get these things, or in October, November, oftentimes in January, the contracts change, so the new prices come out, et cetera. So we'll check on that.
Okay.
Definitely. So
They're only good for 30 days, so that's where that would come.
Okay, moving on, let's see. I had a couple of questions regarding administration. Near to your hearts. But just with the kiosk, and we talked about this in this discussion at one point, and we talked about the 25K, but then when I read, again, the documents, it was a 19K, and I was...
That was the initial one.
Okay.
So then when I had resent the other ones, it was 25,000 because it added on the warming temperature, and these are electrical versus solar. So that's where the 25K came in.
So because they're what? They're higher, I'm sorry.
They're electrical versus solar. Just because we have a lot of issues with the solar machines right now with battery replacement, and the new machines also they have a warming device in there for freezing temperatures. So.
And when it's damp, sometimes these things go on, so that keeps it, less damp.
In the IT life cycle, I was trying to understand, I didn't see a document for that one, so that was a question of mine.
Yeah, basically, every year we have to replace computers that are 5, 6, 7 years old. So we have a life cycle so we're constantly replacing them and trying to keep up to machines that are at least covered by some sort of warranty, or they have the software that's necessary to run, they have the space, they have the speed, etc. So we have to do that. And we don't know exactly how many it's going to be every year. Plus, emergencies come up all the time. Oh, I forgot this, and we have to have it. So in IT, it's kind of like a fudge factor.
So maybe just for me personally, being an old accounting guy, let's this year as we track it through, let's earmark that, and so I know we're kind of estimating, but there's obviously actual cost.
Yeah.
Close as possible.
So we currently purchased 10 to 11 desktops out of this. So we're pretty got a good guesstimate of what exactly we would be doing with that 15,000, and then any other software things, for example, Adobe Professional. So currently, right now, what we have in stock, we probably have about 2 desktops from last year that we haven't used. So we're hopefully bringing everybody up to date with their desktops. So
we plan to, there should be very little, chump change really left over in that particular item. But we'll see when we get at the end of the year.
And then email archive system I saw was at 8, and I just was lost for that one.
Yeah, right now we don't really.
There is backup to that. So RET provided me with this quote that there's about for $8,000. So we currently don't have an archive system for our older emails, and necessarily a policy for that. So that's what this is going to do. We're going to have the software installed and be able to archive old emails at a certain point, perhaps a year or 2, whatever we deem necessary, and according to Oprah and records management. So,
and they'll be more easily sortable, and to be able to look for certain particular items in there. We'll be able to put in a phrase or whatever. Right now, we just have by name.
It's
all your emails. and then we have to go through every one of them. This will help, and we do get, periodically, we get requests for emails, all emails regarding a certain subject, so.
And is this a one-time expense?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, I think I have one more here. Library, 18-02. The document I had, I know again, it could be an estimation that changed, but it was a significant increase. It went from $4,700 to $15,000.
I'll have to look because I know that they used, I know who they used, so I'll relook at that one again.
Okay.
That is a big change, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not atypical of a telephone system coming in, today. But,
I mean, I have no basis of knowing whether 4,700 or 15,000 or 25,000 is the right cost. I'm just saying, to have gone from 4,700 to 50, to have tripled, tripled is what surprised me. I have no idea what it's supposed to cost.
Yeah. Okay.
Raise my eyebrow.
Yes.
Okay. Down here. Mr. Mayor, that was my questions.
You had a bunch of other things. I can just go through them, because
Was that on capital, though?
Yeah, on his capital, you had, on engineering, 1808, in-house engineering services.
Yes.
It's 150,000, you suggested 100,000.
Yeah, I did. So yeah, going up back to that section, I just wanted a little more clarification. I mean, in terms of that allocation of funding. I mean, listen, I think Mr. Kidner and staff do a great job, but I'm also thinking about our exposure, and so I just wanted a little more clarification on that. I read through some of the documents.
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Why don't you explain what that is?
All right,
Yeah,
so.
it wasn't super clear. So.
Okay, so when we go out and we have projects to do, oftentimes we have to bring in outside consultants to design them, etc. So we pay those people, and under the capital, we can pay them from those capitals to do those designs. Well, our people do designs also. We're paying them and spreading that cost over the cost of the bond, because that's appropriate that, now and future people who are benefiting from it will be offsetting the cost of it. And $150,000 is, we go anywhere from 135 to 160. So we just pick $150,000, and that's typically what we usually hit. If it's under, then we cancel it out at the end of the year, and it goes back in the capital surplus, which you use as a revenue source when it comes time to developing the tax rate.
Mr. Manning, just sorry, before you go on, so we can stay on that 18-08. So that's something we put in the capital budget every year then? That's not?
Every year.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So looking at 18-10, work for various traffic signals along Springfield Avenue.
Right.
We approved 45. Engineer changed it from 30 to 45. What was the reason for the change?
Scope of the work.
I think Ms. Adams can answer that.
Okay.
They were just going to do a section of Springfield Avenue, but Engineering Public Works requested that it be the entire length because there's backups and miles of Springfield Avenue.
And time changed so that they flow, as opposed to right now, after so many years, it's, they get a block and you stop and you go another 3 blocks. So it's cost more.
It is causing people to.
Big time problems.
So initially the scope was just a segment.
Yeah.
Yes, now it's the whole thing.
Now it's the whole thing.
Pass on the sanitary improvements.
You don't want your sewers clean?
I do, that's why I passed on it.
One thing you had suggested we reduce the paver, but given our conversation before,
Right.
you're keeping it 350, okay.
Which
So
one?
that was 1812. 1813, this is the inspection vehicle. You asked why we need to, it's 32,500.
Yes.
This is the inspection vehicle for engineering.
Right, yes, and we have an old vehicle, it doesn't, with our new equipment that we have to bring out into the field and the things that we do today, we need a vehicle with a bigger compartment in the back to take those things around Also, their clothes, when they go out and they're doing something in the mud, they have, boots and gear that they put on.
There's a question for you, because I noticed it's my second year doing budgeting, I noticed that we always have vehicles. We always have vehicles, right? Police ask for them, fire, always, so have we done an inventory of all our vehicles?
Yes.
And we can find a way that we can do some type of bulk purchasing of vehicles across all departments? Because it seems like there'd be more of a ability to buy, say, vehicles in bulk. So for example, police need some private vehicles, fire, there are different types of vehicles they request, but is there a way to pool those resources? Because I just noticed that vehicles, which is
we buy under state contracts, so that's all been worked out in advance. In other words,
what is the state contract? It's the lowest bid you can get, correct?
Right. So the state goes out for these types of vehicles, emergency vehicles, etc. Well, not like fire trucks.
Well, that's no, I know.
Right. But other vehicles, and they say, we want, this is the base vehicle, we figure there are going to be 300 necessary for the whole state during this year, and they award that bid usually in three parts, Southern Jersey, Central Jersey, Northern Jersey, and we can buy on it and get a good thing without having to go out and individually do a request for a bidding spec.
I understand that, but the company that allocates the vehicles, is it an umbrella company that provides different types of vehicles? Because obviously, a vehicle for the police department is different than a vehicle for engineering. All under the same umbrella?
Yes, it's all under the same umbrella, and they are pretty much the standard cars, which are then modified to fit the needs of the different departments. So you buy it from a
Bayer Ford,
Wanaco, or something. Warnock.
They do it.
Storage, yes.
And
So,
plates.
right.
Do we get any type of benefit in terms of a bulk purchase? So if we buy 5 vehicles instead of 3 vehicles?
No.
Not at all.
No, it's already worked in.
We could buy 10, it would be the same cost as one, because it's already sort of a
Already,
purchase
yeah.
being done by,
On the state level.
or negotiated like a contract by the state.
Yes, and sometimes yeah.
That's, from a corporate perspective, that's, okay, it's fine. It is what it is. But
is.
I would want
Yes.
that to change. That's not the best way to purchase your products.
Okay, you also asked about the underground storage tank relocation project. We had 100,000 budgeted,
Right.
Number?
1814.
1814.
There's one little more clarification. Again, like when I went through these items, I read the documents, and it's some are outdated, wherever some were revised, but I can only see what I read, and I just notice discrepancies or different price points, and I just want to understand is that all this accumulates to a significant number, and thinking about the 80-20 rule that we talked about, I want to make sure we're in line as much as possible.
All right, so this particular appropriation is for planning and design and development of specs to remove our old underground storage tanks. There's 3. There's a 5,000 gallon, a 10,000 gallon, and I don't remember if the others is 5 or 10. 3 tanks that are under there that we have been told will no longer be insured. Effective, it was almost going to be effective the end of this month, but we were able to get a bridge policy that will cover us for 6 months, but that will also allow us to buy, it will give us an opportunity to get two individual years additional. And so we have to design this thing, take those tanks out, it has to be tested, we have to make sure that the soil's clean. This is a requirement of the state. All those underground storage tanks have to be pulled and they have to be put above ground.
And that's going to be way more than this.
Oh, that's going to be $500,000 to $700,000.
Yeah, this is going to be almost $1 million project that we have no choice but to do.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up a good point. So what I like to see maybe for next year is that when we go through the budget process and these expenses are put on there, if we could earmark and say, this is the 3rd year we're seeing, this is the 2nd year we're seeing, in case of point with the fire, right? We've seen these things come over. I'd love to see a line item saying the number of times we've seen this, so we could be cognizant of how many times this comes up the back. Then also just looking at,
And also how close we are to having it paid.
Yeah, pay for it.
We'll say,
Yes, got it.
Yeah. Another thing too is when we look at, the inventory of vehicles, like I'd love to see, we own 25 vehicles from all these departments, and their age and tenure. So we can kind of start to project, at least as a TC, what we're looking at from a capital.
Yeah,
expense.
we can
Those are things
do
we're
that
interested in.
for your,
With vehicles, I'd like even more specificity to not just the age and the mileage, but.
Do you want it by department? Because the usage is certainly
Department,
different.
Yeah,
yeah.
but, you know, how many miles, because, and maybe we repair our own vehicles, correct?
yes.
Correct.
So how about like a little report on when they repair it, they can report on what the condition is and what looks
That's a
like
good
it's
idea.
going. Because like, you know, Mr. McGee, he said, we get these requests and that's what, when I see 50,000 miles on a vehicle and they're requesting a new one, that's not compelling to me. Because vehicles are supposed to last a lot longer than that.
And the third column I'd be interested in seeing if possible is when these expenses come up, we talked about before, if they're a one-time expense or not. So if it's like, for example, the IT, you just talked about that's $8,000 a one-time expense. So
Oh, I see.
earmark it with asterisk or something, it's a one-time expense we're going to incur for budget 2018. So we should expect not to see that ever again.
We'll revise, well, all right.
Well,
We'll revise the
in our
four.
lifetime.
Yes, we will revise the form.
Joe's no longer here, otherwise we're gonna have to go back to the videotape.
So we'll find-
Unless the software changes.
Yes, yeah, we will do that, and all of the vehicles are evaluated by our Public Works Department before these things are submitted. I didn't know the depth at which you wanted to see it, but now that we do, we'll get it.
Yes, we do, we get asked for new cars all the time.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I mean, we're.
Yeah, no problem.
Definitely needed the one for the health department, for those dead animals and everything.
I narrowed that one out.
Anybody want some deer steaks?
Can I buy that car?
Raccoon, okay. Any other?
On fire, Mr. McGee, you had the personal protective equipment, maintenance equipment. These are the washer dryers.
Yeah, I just, and I think that our fire department does a great job, but at the same time, is this a necessity, really a necessity, or is this something that we can?
Well,
Isn't it not there?
it's not there. Yeah, I recommended we didn't do it.
Okay, all right.
Those two.
No, it's there. It's
Where?
1805.
Yeah, it's
What?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that
That's the
one.
washer dryer. The
Right,
one you
okay,
do
I
not-
thought you meant the storage.
Storage.
Sorry. Yes, that's.
So this was what was told to us, is that this gets rid of all the soot and ash that's on the equipment after they come back in, and that's a leading cause
Cancer.
of cancer.
Yeah.
And this is really a health and safety.
Yeah, that's a definite, because we have to protect them from that.
And we asked, I believe, whether or not a consolidation would eliminate the need for that. and the
But it
answer
won't.
was no.
Right, it's for the building.
Whereas the fire chief did come back, and you saw his.
Yeah, he asked about,
Yes,
Yeah,
so,
I'm not in favor of
Yeah.
considering that.
command vehicle. Anybody interested in putting the command vehicle back in? No.
okay, just want to go rest tomorrow.
And then under, Mr. McGee, under Public Works, you had 1804, which was the hardware jaw test.
Yeah.
I don't remember what that is. Do you remember what that is?
That's for the lift that's
Oh.
there now. It's
Oh, this
Very
is the
old.
one that they said everybody gets under it?
Yes.
yeah, and it's old. It gets serviced every month, I believe, but it's just at its
In the automotive department, right?
If they physically get under this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do work with 5,000, 10,000
right.
above it.
Okay, approved.
Unless you want to volunteer.
No, nobody wants that.
All right, I think we went through all your,
You sure did, and I appreciate it.
Okay. So is there anything else? So here's where we are with the, where are we? With the reduction of the 60,000, we are
Which we didn't do.
about 3,373,000.
You mean the subtotal with the 5% Section 20 cost?
No, I'm just looking at the bottom line here, 3,700. If you took 60, right now, if you look at your, you have this sheet, right? It's 3,793,
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
So
it should be
we're taking the 60,000 off of that?
right, so
3,733,
3,733.
okay.
733, yeah.
3,733, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's about 84% of the $4 million we're going to pay off.
Yes.
So it's slightly higher than.
Slightly.
But, you know, I pushed hard to put more money back in the roads because I think we have to keep fixing our roads. We're slipping. And I think for that extra 5%, we are still reducing. We're not incurring more debt than we're retiring, and I think it's prudent to do this, so.
That was our discussion, that we have to.
We're not keeping up.
No, right.
All right?
Water you should have skipped, and you could have watched our budget hearing.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, we'll move forward with the capital budget.
Yes.
You have a couple of questions, you'll get back to it, a couple of things on that library funding and.
Yeah, the 4,700 and then 73,300.
And I'll send you our backup and.
And all the backup, we'll get you a new sheet, it will be dated, it will be timed, it will have all that information.
Right, so this is important because we have to go, before we want to incur costs to have our bond counsel prepare a bond ordinance, we want to make sure we get all on the same page.
Right, so it's,
It would be good if we could do this, introduce it at the next meeting.
yes.
I'll have this by the end of the week.
All right. And if anyone has any questions, then if we don't get questions or have a
By
vote,
Friday, we'll move to do it.
then we can move, because how this works is we pay our bond counsel to write up the ordinance. It has to be written up by them. And it costs money, it costs whatever it costs.
It's in the section 20.
Okay, it costs money. So we want to make sure that we're all comfortable with the capital before we do that.
100%.
Okay,
Yes. Okay.
so
We're going to have it for introduction at the
Yes.
next meeting based on you're not coming back to
correct.
us.
As long as once you get us the stuff,
Get
you know what you do? Get it to us, have everyone respond to you separately just to sign off
I'll
on the.
blind copy everybody.
Yes, we'll get that, and we'll
Okay.
ask them to, yes.
No.
Good.
Sign off.
That's
No.
excellent.
All right,
Better than I thought.
let's go. New positions.
Yes.
New positions.
New positions.
All right.
I tried.
So at our,
28 through 37.
at our last meeting, we agreed to a records clerk going from part-time to full-time.
Well, can we, all right, we know the, yeah, okay. We'll start, can we start with the?
4 captains, we said no.
No.
Building inspector to part-time, we said no.
No.
The records bureau
Yes.
clerk, we said yes, it's going from part-time to full-time.
Yes.
DPW, we said yes to the 2 jitney drivers, they're gonna start in July.
Yes.
We said no to standby drivers.
Right, oh, yeah, definitely.
We're gonna talk to the CWA about the auto
Possibly.
workers at DPW getting licensed so they can cover. Building operations manager, we said yes, because we have the revenue to support that. That's to cover Woodland and Bergdorf.
Right,
We said no to administrative assistant and rec.
yes.
We said yes to the intern.
$0, right?
No, we didn't.
No, we said preferably. We kept 3,000 in.
Okay.
We said, you know, if they can get college credit.
Wait a minute, what did we say to, wait, recreation administrator?
0, nothing.
Nothing, no, okay, then 3,000, okay.
Staff engineer, we agreed to the change.
Yes, okay.
Seasonal worker and tax assessment, we said no. Crossing guard, we said yes.
Yes, and that's already in there, so.
So that does not equal $90,000. I don't know where the 90,000 came from. Right, does it? It's 5,
Doesn't look like it.
3, it's 60. Maybe, well, it's close. Maybe it is close.
Yeah, it's.
Okay. We okay with those?
Yes.
All right.
Hey.
So overall, Mr. Mayor, do you have any overall numbers for us as far as where we stand right now in revenue and expenses?
No, actually, the audits, the statement, the AFS, the annual financial statement should be ready. They're working on it right now. You will get it prior to the introduction of the budget, of course, because we should have a finance committee meeting to review all of the numbers that they have.
All right, we will do that.
Okay?
We're introducing on
The
20th of March?
20th of March.
We need that stuff right away. Take a
Yeah,
look at it.
I got it, so please put them, we gotta get it from Juan right away.
And then our final will be the, whatever that is, the 17th of April, is that our meeting?
It's the second meeting in April, yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the budget? If not, can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the items on the consent agenda that we haven't already approved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams? Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
For resolution number 5318 through 5518, 5618, yes. And abstain from open session minutes from the 20th and closed session minutes from the 20th.
What about
You're okay,
5718?
right?
Yeah, 5718.
Here's
Yes.
what happened.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, public comment, we have no one in the room, so we will not hear from anyone. We did not get the rollover of bond anticipation notes.
You did what?
Did not get,
I didn't see it.
The backup that I got with that is in your packet.
The packet we got tonight, or the packet we got Friday?
No, because
No.
I didn't get this.
no, we didn't get this. Please stop putting stuff on from that department that we don't get.
Absolutely, it will not happen again.
All right,
If you don't have it for the Friday mail, it's not going on.
Okay.
all right.
Administrative reports, Mr. Manning.
Okay, I have several things. First of all, we all know that a winter storm incident is pending. In town, there is no overnight parking on streets, and including county roads, because the county has also notified us that no one is to be on the roads. That will facilitate the removal of the snow. Tomorrow's jitney service, that's Wednesday's jitney service, AM, PM, canceled. Do not throw snow into the street. Please just put it, on your lawn or the side. It just screws the whole process up and it doesn't help us out. State of emergency, we have a state of emergency declared both by the county and by our township as of 8 p.m. tonight. And lastly, the library, both buildings are closed tomorrow. I'm not sure what the school did. I thought they were going to make it.
They shut down.
The school is closed tomorrow. All right, so school is closed tomorrow.
And the library is closed also.
Yes, and we are not sure, but we'll probably have a delayed opening here. Most people will probably take a day off, but I'll be here to open up the building sometime once the parking lot is okay. What?
Don't drive. Unless we pass a motion to make it essential.
Okay.
Is the state of emergency still in effect if there's no snow like there isn't now?
They'll cancel it.
Yeah.
Hours old.
Yeah, no, they do it in preparation. So
Happen overnight.
Yes, that's supposed to start for 2 hours.
And that's my report.
Let's hope we're not here.
Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Manning?
No.
Mr. Desiderio?
I have no report, Mayor. I'm just going to ask Mr. Lembrick about tomorrow night's meeting. You have to make a decision on that.
Yes, I think tomorrow night's meeting we'll schedule as a teleconference, and I will distribute the dial-in tonight.
Perfect.
Is that, is that?
Fine.
Yeah, that works. That's not a public meeting issue?
No, it's a public safety committee,
Yeah,
so no.
okay.
No action's going to be taken.
Taken anyway.
It's going to be discussing.
Okay.
We advertised it.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't have a legal issue.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Okay, so yeah, you'll get the dial-in,
And I'll
Mr.
be
Manning
fine
will
with
get
it.
it.
That's fine. Okay.
Everyone up here will get it.
Ms. Fritzen?
2 items, Mayor, even though I continue to be threatened by Mr. Desiderio to have no report.
I have seen you do it, I believe it.
Oh,
I believe it, I'll
Okay,
testify.
the 3 resolutions that you passed at the last meeting, the ABC resolutions, they were all accepted by the state, and license term were issued for 5 Highland Place Associates, 2015-16, 2016-17, 2017-18, so they are reinstated and up to date. It's on them to make sure that they file by June 30th for the next term. But right now, they are up to speed. My other item is just to report that this Friday, we're offering a AED/CPR class for township employees, and we had 40 spots. And I want to say that within 3 days, all 40 spots were taken. So the employees are really interested in knowing how to operate it. Hopefully they never will have to, and also performing CPR. So I think that's a proud moment for the township.
I want to learn how to do that.
Yes.
Well, you're a township employee, so next time.
That's right.
That's all.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Fritzen?
No questions.
Okay, Township Committee, Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mayor, in celebration of Women's History Month, we've been organizing several events. Mostly all are welcome. Soma Celebrates Women kicks off, well, tonight, but it also, Thursday, March 8th is International Women's Day at South Mountain Tavern. This is when everyone is invited, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
We can't keep you guys out. Public spot. No, anyway, just kidding. It's 7 to 9. There's drink specials, food specials, and we'll be celebrating at South Mountain Tavern in South Orange on Valley Street. Saturday, March 10th, this is where the male gender is pretty much excluded, unless you want to wear something else. Wear white and join at 2 p.m. for a group photo at Memorial Park, where the stage goes for the Maple Woodstock. That was postponed from last week. Sunday, March 11th, from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Durant Hedden House is an event that they are putting on called Maisie Brews of Business, which is about 1920s tea rooms, which were some of the first businesses ever started by women, and a couple of them were done in Maplewood and South Orange. May 12th, 14th, 15th, 21st, and 24th, there are several events happening at the Maplewood Library in conjunction with the Ideas Festival 2018, including many prominent local women, Olympian, Columbia High School graduate Hazel Clark, among others. Thursday, March 15th, former Mayor Ellen Davenport will be in conversation at the Hilton Neighborhood Association meeting. It starts at 7:30 at DeHart Park, at DeHart Community Center. Sunday, March 18th is Women Empowerment, Shattering Glass Ceiling. We have guest speaker Marjorie Perry, who's the CEO of a construction consulting business and very much a successful woman in a man's business. And that is at 6 p.m. at Bergdorf Center. And then Saturday, March 24th from 4 to 7, we're inviting moms and their girls to watch a woman's empowerment movie, Hidden Figures, at SOPAC from 4 to 7. People are encouraged to have it be a sleepover, jammies, casual, comfortable. And then Saturday, March 24th, Women's History Month free jazz night at Cornbread on Springfield Avenue from 7:30 to 9:15. You can find information about all these events on somawomen.org, and that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Daffis.
No report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. McGehee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and well done, Ms. Adams. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the students, faculty, and parent volunteers of Maplewood Middle School on putting on an incredido musical Cinderella last weekend. It was wonderful. I enjoyed it myself thoroughly.
I wonder why.
I'd also like to also recognize the hundreds of people who put time, energy, and resources into our Black History Month celebration. It was really our first true celebration, and it was a phenomenal events took place all over town, from poetry readings, book discussions, authors, live music, and food to movie viewings and discussions and dramatic theater. It was an excellent experience, and looking forward to doing it next year. Congratulations to the Achieve Foundation on another successful night of 100 dinners. I would like to especially recognize the events hosted by Carla and Dave Shields, as well as Becky Rosenfield and Nancy Solomon. A festive time had by all. This Thursday night, March 8th at the Woodland at 7 p.m. Please join me as I will be at the Men Gala. It's the annual gratitude celebration. For those who don't know, Men operates 17 food pantries in Essex County, including at St. Joe's and Our Ladies of Sorrows. in South Orange. It's an opportunity for you to support your neighbors in need and provide fresh food and healthy food and access to nutrition for them. The tickets for the event are $125 or $150 at the door, or you can simply make a donation. A couple important facts. $300 donation covers 4 weeks of bananas for a pantry. $240 covers 4 weeks of carrots for a pantry. And $75 will cover each. I'd like to thank Committeewoman Adams for her donation already. Thank you so much. And last but not least, I want to mention that the school board of Maplewood South Orange has a email blast that goes out. We had a joint meeting and they wanted me to mention that. So please go to school board's website and sign up for their newsletter, which is very informative. One more thing. The Maplewood Ideas Festival is starting this month, and so great events always every year. So please come and support our. Sarah Lester does a wonderful job. Support our libraries and organizations, as you'll see some wonderful speakers and writers over this period. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lindbergh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of items, and all but one of them should be quick. First, I'd like to echo what some of the others have said. We had a great, very successful and robust Black History Month set of celebrations here, and I'm looking forward to, as Ms. Adams outlined, the very significant events we have coming up for the Women's Month, and congratulations. That was a very impressive group of women that were assembled here tonight of local leaders, all of whom are great role models for the young women of this community, including my own daughter. We had a very successful forum last night, a public community gathering to meet the two gentlemen who are candidates for to be the next Maplewood Police Department chief. We had well over 100 residents in attendance. There was really good discussion. There was great questions. I think it was a really good opportunity for both of the candidates to hear the community's concerns, the community's goals, and also have a chance to express their vision for the department. And as promised, for those of you there last night, we'll be sending out a survey so we can get your feedback on the candidates and what you heard. And we certainly welcome the input of the community as we make this important decision within the next month or so. I think all of us will be standing in solidarity, though not in the physical presence of the students of Maplewood Middle School, South Orange Middle School, and Columbia High School next week when they participate on March 14th in the national walkout for students in support of gun reform and gun safety and more reasonable and sane gun laws in this country. It's a long time coming. I know that here in New Jersey we already have some tough laws and we're looking to make them tougher, but we need national reform and we need it. We needed it years ago, and we needed it weeks ago, and we need it now. As Mr. McGehee and I were at the meeting with the Board of Education in the two towns last week, the town is, the school district is asking that parents and other community supporters, please show your support in other ways, but do not try to come to the schools or join the walkout. That causes a major security issue. The police and school security people who are going to be there are going to be looking at students, and they're going to know who the students are. And if there's adults and people who shouldn't be there mixing with the students, that's going to only potentially cause concern about a security threat. So please support them, but support them from afar. I was hoping to have a little more information tonight on our fund drive for rec scholarships and pool pals. I'll certainly be reporting on that on social media and at the next meeting as we finalize some of our plans to raise money to make sure that the families and young people of this community who may not be able to afford the registration fees for recreation programs or for our community pool are able to participate in those opportunities. Another thing that came out of our meeting with the Board of Ed in the two towns, there's going to be a budget workshop presentation this Saturday, and that's certainly being advertised. But you know, as most people know, that the school taxes is about 60 cents on the dollar of our property taxes, and there's some serious budget issues with our schools. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go on Saturday, where the board and the district superintendent are having a budget workshop presentation. Lastly, Senator Sweeney here in New Jersey today put forth what I think is a really phenomenal and groundbreaking proposal on public school funding. It would be the largest increase in state aid for education in more than 25 years. The proposal is a $758 million package, with $127 million coming from shifting from overfunded districts, and the rest, so the lion's share, coming from a corporate business recapture tax. There would be $431 million towards special education aid, and that would include out-of-district placements. This would be huge for the South Orange Maplewood School District. We have our special education budget and out-of-district placement budget is, to my understanding, over twice the state average, given the size of our, when considering the size of our district. So to get state aid to offset some of that would make a big difference. There's also $227 million proposed for underfunded districts, of which we would certainly be one, and $50 million towards improving and expanding preschool programs. So the reallocation of the adjustment aid to districts with growing enrollments, which certainly the district enrollment here in South Orange and Maplewood has been significant in the last couple of years, yet our state funding has not gone up accordingly. Senator Sweeney's plan would take that into account and also phase out funding for districts where enrollment has been shrinking. So I'm certainly going to be following this as it proceeds down in Trenton, but I want to express my support for Senator Sweeney's continued efforts on this, and likely at either the next meeting or the first meeting in April, I'm looking forward to putting forward a resolution in support of this that I hope my Township Committee colleagues will support, given how crucial the state aid is in terms of us helping to keep taxes and this community affordable. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my report.
Thank you. I have a few things. One, I just want to let you know that Ms. Mancuso and I met with the leadership over at Avalon Bay Apartments about pool membership. So they're going to work with us to promote pool membership to the new tenants there, and actually it's going to be beneficial. We'll also get them to hook up with other recreational programs and library programs. So it'll be a new audience for us to tap. Just want to give a shout out to our Cultural Affairs Office for the Lunar Festival this Sunday. It was really good. We mentioned Black History Month. We did have a great month. I'm calling together the organizers that we pulled together back in November, and we're going to have a little coffee at Palmer's Cafe, a Black-owned business, Thursday morning. So
Also a woman-owned business.
It's true, woman-owned. So we got 2 months covered.
Yep.
I have office hours Tuesday the 13th from 7 to 8 p.m. And on March 17th, we have talked to the Township Committee from 9 to 12. We will be, I believe, at DPW.
Right.
And at noon, we're doing a ribbon cutting at the new senior center. And we will have corned beef and cabbage and a vegetarian option. Probably probably pastrami as the vegetarian option. No beer. So that's it. Unless we have anything else, we get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll see you on March 20th. Thank you.
Thank you.